Well, I was at Berkeley, so I remember
Go Bears.
Go Bears. So I remember being at protests that were pretty offensive and seeing Jewish faculty come out. So what do we do? And we had a similar situation here at UCSB. What do we do when the professors that we're having these issues with anti-Zionism, anti-Israel, are Jewish?
All right, so what do we do? This is a great question, and I was limited in my time. So when I finished the keynote, I had page 22, which says what to do. Yeah, so thank you for that first question, and and you're not on the payroll. First I want to give you the context and then the specific answer. Okay, the context is my goal here was to educate and to show complexity and to show the way in which all of this stuff gets fuzzy, right? And to use this narrative in order to illustrate that. So the first thing you have to see is that these Jewish, the perhaps anti-Zionist Jewish faculty are from Ethnic Studies U. Right? They're of that thought and that generation and that perspective. So the first thing is just kind of know where they're coming from, why they're doing it, and how that works. All right. So there's two ways. You can go after them on content or you can go after on form. All right. The form is, why on earth is a professor doing this? Come over to bucolic U. Right. That would essentially be the way it would go. And then the second is to actually engage the debate that's going. To be perfectly frank, there is that culture ain't going to change. And that's going to keep going. And where I focus myself is any students who are enrolled in those classes and they see the stuff out on the quad translating itself in the classroom, translating to their chances of getting into graduate school. That's the moment at which we do that. And for that, by the way, it rests with the student to make a protest. And that's sort of the way the system works. Perhaps Arthur can give some insight onto that. It's difficult because when students are powerless in the classroom and feeling intimidated, to then tell them they need to go to the department chair and the dean and they need to make the fight themselves for themselves is very difficult. Community groups don't have standing really in a case like that, and mostly what happens is the students just drop out. So it's an excellent question. It's a specific answer that I don't actually have.
Even though there's bias in history in the way things are presented and by inclusion or omission, how do you present complex issues without having the side presented in a certain way so that there is a breadth of academia there without bias, or allowing students to have an opportunity to get enough information to form their own opinions?
All right, so I use the word objective instead of bias. From the morning keynote, I love the way she distinguished between those, but I'll just go on my language. There are two levels of objectivity in history, one which we can control and one which we can't. We cannot control that which is informed by who we are and how we have been educated and raised in our experience of society. Then there's this are you just out for a ideological political purpose? That's the bad one, right? So a good professional academic will, in my mind, bucolic U, erase the ideological part and try to be as forward as possible about who they are. You notice I said to you, white, male, Jewish, right, that line, so that I could put out to you how it is that I'm being read. My answer is that I like to give the three leading theses for every lecture. I don't like two because then students say the truth is somewhere in the middle, and it's not a dialectic or linear way of learning. There's this, that, and the truth may be somewhere else entirely, and you should just all be really frustrated by the end of this hour, and I'm going to try to get you there, right? I, in fact, tell them that they get 1/2 grade bonus for disagreeing with my thesis, because I tell them which one is mine when it's in my area of writing. And I do that because, one, I say it's going to be harder a paper to write because, honestly, I'm going to be more passionate about that because I believe it. And two, I don't ever want anyone to think that you're going to be graded harshly for disagreeing with the professor. How cool it is when we assign books that I wrote in class and it's a student-led class and it's their job to come in for 75 minutes and criticize the book. To me, that's like the ideal. That's the bucolic U ideal around the seminar table, when you can even have that conversation and the students feel safe about it.
So in that way, would you object to having the JDL guy and some other guy who brought in an opposing opinion?
I object because the intent and purpose was not educational. That was the express one. That was not communicated to the speaker, by the way. They told him that he was, honored and revered, and they were in fact laughing behind his back. And I had physical safety concerns as well for the students, and there's no training, there's no background. The parallel would be 2 professors or 3 professors who have different opinions on a common question sitting down. All right, so let me anticipate another one, which is what about those anti-Israel panels that get put up with no pro-Israel person on the panel? It happens a lot. Okay, if the goal of the panel is an exploration of anti-Zionist ideology, it's okay, because the audience who's coming is expecting to have that delivered. But if the panel is being sold as modern Israel, let's talk, and that's all you're getting, then you have, that's an injustice to themselves. So for me, I often use a truth in advertising argument. I said, I'm holding the paper, this is what you delivered, there's a big delta between those two, therefore you are irresponsible and unprofessional. There is a general underarching question which I want to try to pull out, which does relate. And this is, how do you get academics engaged in any type of political issue at all? And there's two answers to that. The first is, if they subscribe to ethnic studies U approach, they will, because we just saw them at Berkeley coming out at the anti-Zionist rallies. So if one were going to look for academics who publicly identify believing that it is their job to deal with issues of the environment or wherever it is, they will be there willingly. And a good place to look for them is any online petition for any of those particular causes. Because one litmus test you'll find between the two approaches is who signs petitions and who doesn't. I generally don't sign petitions. Because for that reason, I'm just trying to step back from that engagement, so they will do that. The second, and this is actually the work that I do with the JCRC and the ADL up in San Francisco, when they want to appeal to Jewish professors to get them engaged in some way, and this is on my list of what to do, you've got to do it according to their rules. One of my main mandates as a public intellectual is to try to explain the rules of the university to lay leaders, because it's a very different set of rules. And if you come in with communal rules, you are going to get pushed back. If you walk in with speaking their language, it's going to be much better. We now get Jewish professors and even non-Jewish professors on trips to Israel that are sponsored by a colleague we have in New York. And the way that they do that is the entire trip, once they recruit the professor, they find all the Israelis who are working in the same academic field. Then they set up meeting after meeting after meeting with all of them, and it becomes a professional trip, at the end of which they can actually report to their dean that they have done research and met, and they have all these new projects started. So just by finding a way that you can reframe the argument. So the challenge for you would be to reframe all of that stuff into language that works on the CV for professors.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I lead a freshman seminar on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and I come at it from a very different position than you do. I so appreciate the presentation you gave, and in fact, I think you and I are very similar in the approach that we would take on this issue. The question, because my primary goal is that despite tremendous differences, let's talk to one another about these differences in ways that are civil, which most of the time we don't see. So the models that we have for our students are horrendous. The question that I have is in leading this course, I sometimes, I guess I'm not entirely sure what anti-Israel is. And when I see anti-Israel connected increasingly to anti-Semitism, I get a chill that I feel really uncomfortable about. And so I'd like you to kind of guide me in how to manage those waters.
So I'll just give you the quick, hopelessly reductionist answer. And then, of course, it's all about navigating the moment and the mood and the trust of the students. Anti-Israelism is critique of a particular policy. Anti-Zionism is an anti-nationalist belief that the Jewish people do not have a right to a homeland. And anti-Semitism plays on the major themes of anti-Semitism, Jews around money, power, newspaper media, and control, right? And trying to get, and all right, so that's easy if you believe those three definitions. Now what happens is sometimes people are using one or two as a mask for three. And it's a really hard thing to know, is this really a mask or not? So I have 2 or 3 follow-up questions about is anti-Zionism really anti-Semitism? Well, do you agree against U.S. nationalism and all nationalism and French nationalism and British? Usually they don't. Do you speak about all the other nationalisms against it? No. You know, anarchists are really good in my book here, because they honestly do believe against, they're anti-nationalist everywhere, right? So anarchists can be anti-Zionists, I don't have a problem. Short of that, I think that there's a double standard, at least with being honest about it. If it's a pedagogic educational question, it's about the trust you establish with your students from the beginning and the ability to go there. And if it comes out, to engage it in a way that is respectful and trusting. I'm doing a Jewish social responsibility seminar. We do a month on Zionism. We've got a lot of Israel activist students in there. They're given all the great pro-Israel lines. I've got one ambivalent or anti-Zionist, non-Jewish student in the class, and God bless her, she raised her hand and she put it out there, What about the Palestinians? What about the fact that they came in and displaced the people who were already there? How brave for that student in a Jewish studies class surrounded by this group to say that, So I stopped and I gave public class acknowledgement to her. I thanked her and I said, we're reading Irving Greenberg's article, The Ethics of Jewish Power, my favorite article in all of Jewish studies. I highly recommend it. And I said, that's what Greenberg is trying to say, and none of you were willing to do it because you wouldn't say what she just said. So thank you very much, because I want her to know that. I want her to feel empowered to do it. I want her to bring her friends to the class next semester and next year. So thanks.
You made a brief reference to what happened on this campus, I think 2 years ago, with Professor Bill Robinson. I was wondering if you could share how you felt about it.
I only followed it tangentially, which meant I only read the news reports, and what I was reading was once again this classic dispute between the two approaches. And for me, and this will be a good conclusion, there's academic freedom and there's academic responsibility, right? Now Arthur's making a legal case about boundaries and how those are broken even before you get to my argument, which is how I appreciate how you're laying it out. What I would get to is, okay, so you did it, so you have a right to do it. Are you proud of it as a scholar and a PhD and someone who is supposed to represent the best that the world has to offer in terms of deep thinking, right? Because that's what we are as colleagues. We're supposed to do all of that. So I tend to engage them that way, and in that sense, it didn't hit my standard at all. So, thank you.
Really wonderful.
Thank you.